Hey everybody, James Davenport with PC Gamer here, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show for March 12th, 2020. Busy times for video games right now. A lot of games on the horizon. Half-Life Alyx, Doom Eternal, and Mountain Blade Bannerlord hitting the end of this week. Call of Duty Warzone just came out. Our staff members are liking that quite a bit. Resident Evil 3 Remake happening soon. It's a busy release season, surprisingly. And I'm currently reviewing a game. I can't say which right now. It's taking up all my time. You know, those deadlines, those embargoes there. You got to turn it out pretty quickly. And I want to make sure I dedicate all the time I can to this game and make sure it gets a fair shake in my critique. So this week is a simple show. Just Tyler, Wilde, and I. And we're going to be talking about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This is a platformer, metroidvania-esque sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest, excuse me. Tyler reviewed the first one, and he reviewed this one just earlier this week. He dug it quite a bit, but we do kind of get into the weeds in terms of it's going to sound nitpicky is what I'll say. It's going to sound we're like we're nitpicking, like maybe we're not too hot on it. But it's because I love this genre so much. I love platformers. I love Metroidvanias. We are just going to get down and dirty with some of the things that we think work and don't work. Again, it comes recommended. Go read the review at pcgamer.com/reviews. Tyler's got his whole critique up there, but this is sort of an extended discussion about the things that we liked and didn't like about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Alrighty, I'm here with Tyler Wilde, executive editor, PCGamer.com, and
how's it going?
Good, pretty good. I'd say I'm like an 81 out of 100 right now.
Is that where you're at? Okay,
yeah, approximately. Did I get it right?
Yeah, I think that is right.
Tyler, you're here to talk Ori and the Will of the Wisps, a game you reviewed over this last weekend and published earlier this week on PCGamer.com. It's the long-awaited follow-up to 5 years, I believe, Ori and the
Blind Forest.
Blind Forest. I almost said silent.
That's right.
And for those who don't know, it's the first game was. A lot of people call it a Metroidvania. It was more so into the massacre platforming, action, and storytelling with some sort of branching pathways. You could find upgrades to your health and such to make the journey a little easier. But Ori and the Will of the Wisps is, I don't know, Tyler, you can tell me. I've only played the first couple hours. Definitely feels like more of a traditional big map Metroidvania adventure.
Yeah, it's huge in comparison. You know, I think Ori and the Blind Forest, I probably ran through it in 5 hours or so. I don't know. Yeah. I don't remember exactly, but it was, you pretty much go from area to area in the first game I'm talking about. And, you know, there's like a boss kind of escape scene that you go through. In this one, everything that was there in Ori and the Blind Forest is represented in some way. It's still got kind of a sappy, cute story. It's still about magical forest spirits and restoring balance and all that, but the map is huge. There are, I think, about 10 distinct areas that I counted.
All right.
And it has that classic Metroidvania structure where you go to one area and you need to unlock and learn a new movement ability or some kind of ability in order to solve that area's sort of platforming tricks and challenges and puzzles, and then you can take that new ability back to older areas and maybe you'll be able to get to a secret or you know, find something you couldn't otherwise have reached. So that's kind of the format of it. There's a lot more combat as well than there was in the first game.
It's much better, at least like right off the bat. for me, because in the last game it was I hated the combat. I didn't like the first story very much. Just like, this is where I'm coming from.
I liked it. You're weird.
I know. I think I'm an outlier here, and we'll touch on these points because I'm more sold by a long shot on this game, because I think the combat in the first game, for people who don't remember, it was just like you kind of jammed on a button and you shot out these little, well, wisps, I guess, that kind of tracked enemies near you. You didn't really. It wasn't very deliberate. You just kind of jammed on a button.
It wasn't. Yeah, I mean, calling it combat is kind of even a stretch.
Yeah.
It was just sort of like you just kind of mashed a button and killed stuff.
You got a sword now.
You got a sword now. Yeah, so you actually have to, like, you know, do sort of, well, combos. You just mash the sword attack button, and it does a series of attacks. I don't really love the combat here.
Oh, okay.
How
does it fall apart for you?
It can be fun for a while. Like, if you, I mean, one annoying thing is that most of the time I feel like my attacks don't actually like cancel what an enemy's doing, so I'll just kind of be slashing away and they'll be doing their own thing, you know, getting hit and then charging through me or swinging through me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of particle effects that kind of obscure what they're doing, so it's kind of hard to. I would be okay with that if you could read what's happening a little easier.
Yeah, there wasn't like a very clear delineation for me between like light attacks that can be interrupted and heavy attacks that can. It just kind of all became a mess of particles and animations where I was just kind of getting hit and hitting back, and it was fine because, you know, you can upgrade your all kinds of stuff and take less damage over time by upgrading spirit shards you find. So like if you're having trouble with a boss fight, and there are boss fights now, you can quit out of it, go upgrade some stuff, spend some of your spirit money, and come back and be better prepared. But just generally, like, I enjoy the game for the really precise platforming stuff, for the perfect little double jumps and grappling and solving little puzzles or challenges, and not so much for boss fights with big health bars, where I'm like learning a pattern, whacking at something with a sword. Obviously the platforming comes into that because you're kind of bouncing around the boss level, trying to dodge projectiles and things. But I don't know, I think it's totally fine if you play Will of the Wisps on normal and start to get frustrated in areas to go start over on easy. And I think that would be a totally understandable thing to do, because on easy you still have to do like the tricky platforming stuff. You just enemies will just die easier, and some of the enemies in this game are just kind of annoying. It's a lot of the same ones throughout the whole game, like the mosquitoes that dive bomb you, and the stuff, you know, the sort of Metroid-y enemies that stick on walls and just blow up when you get near. Like, they don't, it's not like they blow up and that like propels you to another area. It has nothing to do with platforming. They're just annoying. They're just things you have to like deal with as you're trying to.
Yeah,
exactly. And you have projectile attacks you can use, but like, I just don't see why I'm sitting there going pew 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 trying to kill something so that I can keep going. Like,
yeah, I mean, in the first game, I felt that really hard, because you'd have to jam on the button for a while to like eventually get rid of the little blob that shoots spikes you can barely see. And here it's like the same. It's the same, but you can be more deliberate, I suppose, and just get through it a little easier, and in your own way.
Yeah,
but
I think some people will like the combat. I mean, I don't know. It is kind of fun how if you're doing a sword combo, you kind of stay in the air. It is sort of it's sort of a way to almost levitate, and if you hit, it resets your double jump. So you can kind of cheese enemies by like doing downward strikes, double jumping, and then another strike, and just stay hovering above them, which I sort of enjoyed, like the juggling act of doing that, even though I don't think I was like doing combat like you're quote unquote supposed to, because like I would get 3 enemies underneath me, like confused because I was on the same sort of X coordinate as them, so they would just be turning left and right trying to figure out where I was, but I was just bouncing above their heads. Yeah.
Well, nice work. Okay, so combat is marginally improved, still maybe not the thing we're here for. And I agree. I think the platforming and the world itself are, the lavish art with its intense detail and great depth and like wild animations. A lot. I think I didn't think it would feel significantly different because at a glance it looks very much the same, but I feel like there's a lot more going on in this world, and I just like the world way more, and in large part because of the characters that you kind of run across. What's the big toad's name? I forget his name, but he's got that big booming voice.
I feel like, yeah, it is a more lively world. There are little moki that look sort of like meerkats that kind of run around behind the scenes. Like there's a real sense of depth. There's a sense that there's a foreground, a midground, a background. Everything you're doing takes place in the foreground since it's 2D, but there are just really cool scenes where a creature will be moving around in the background, or these cute little meerkat kind of things will be running around. And they'll come talk to you, and there are other characters who wander around the world, and you'll find them stationed, in various areas, and they'll give you little quests to do, just things they want that you don't have to do. And I tended to complete them accidentally. Like I would just talk to everyone I saw, and they would give me something. I'd talk to someone else, 2 hours later, and they'd say, "Oh, you have the thing that I want." But you can also, over time, help build up a new little town for the Moki, and
I like that.
They move in, and it's cute, and it does kind of grow your sort of attachment to the world, which is really beautiful again, and includes more biomes. I don't know when that word became a video game word, but just to mean it's got
more
a
colors.
It's got a water area. It's got a snow area. It's got a desert area.
They're very pretty areas though. Like I kind of roll my eyes, or I rolled my eyes when I started walking left or right or something, started seeing snow on the ground. I was like, okay, all right, here we go. And then
here's the mountain area. It's gonna be ice. It's gonna be slippery, and you're gonna have to
icicles,
melt it.
Yeah, the whole shebang. But yeah, it's amazing
really fun though. It's beautiful, and the platforming, some parts better than others. They obviously, since it's much longer than the original, it does keep all the abilities from the original, but it's got to add a lot more because it's got more areas, and the sort of metroidvania format is that when you go to a new area, you learn something new, and that's how you solve the puzzles in that area. So there's portals that connect each other, but those puzzles are there was nothing kind of mind-bending or surprising about them. So I felt like that
it's a bummer,
fell flat. But then there's also kind of somewhat late in the game, you get an ability that lets you burrow into these big sand pits, and you can dash through them and dash out of them and shoot out like a sandworm or something.
Cool.
Which is pretty great. The water stuff is there are bubbles that you can jump on. I think just because there's so many areas and so many abilities, some of them just kind of get lost in the mix.
Yeah.
You go to the snow area and you learn how to shoot kind of a hot projectile, and it doesn't really do much for you anywhere but there. and it's sort of, the idea is you want all these abilities to come together in strange ways outside of where you learn them, but not all of them do. Not all of them do. So it doesn't feel beautifully cohesive exactly. It just it feels a little bit sloppy in some ways, where it's well, by the end of the game, you have so many abilities to choose from, right? But I just sort of stuck with the ones I had kind of been using most of the way through. Because, I didn't really feel the need to mix it up. We've got a feather that can shoot gusts of air, but that's only really useful in like, you know, a few specific situations. And if the puzzle wasn't designed for that ability, then just keep it unequipped. There's no reason for it. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, that's I think a telltale sign of like my favorite. The word metroidvania, we just use it now. We accept it, right? My favorite metroidvanias is that final challenge. I know, like in Hollow Knight, which this game feels. It feels like this game was very inspired by Hollow Knight in some big ways, and maybe I'll touch on that in a bit. But there was the optional, and I'm forgetting the name of it, White Palace section, which was basically the final gauntlet to unlock the true ending, and it brought together everything you learned, and all of your abilities. Granted, it's not like you had however many you get in Will of the Wisps piled on top of one another. Probably a much smaller pile, but it's really cool to see your muscle memory and your instincts when you sort of see these signposted things that you've been taught slowly, maybe somewhat subconsciously over like the course of 10 hours, 15 hours, just come together. That's really cool. And
there's definitely parts where that happens in a certain way where, you know, you couldn't possibly bring everything in the game together because you'd have to be switching between these active abilities that are bound to different buttons. But,
right.
You know, there'll be a chase sequence where it's like, okay, I have to remember how to, you know, do the basic jump, double jump, dash midair. Then I also have to do this sort of projectile bash move where you can kind of pause time for a second when you're near a projectile and like shoot out away from it. And then I have to also remember to grapple, and I have to remember to use the dash to dive into the sand pits and shoot out of them at the right angle and speed. And so you're combining a lot of stuff. I guess I just did find it disappointing whenever I did run into an ability that just kind of could only be useful in very specific situations.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think from what I've noticed, the basic platforming abilities, the double jump, the grapple, the launch, I don't know what you call it. All that stuff is pretty familiar from the first game. Most of that was in the first game. I don't think the dash was, but it comes together in a really natural way, and I'm already like, my muscle memory has got that stuff on lockdown, and I'm just blazing through these long interconnected levels pretty naturally. It's a pretty rare feeling and a good feeling. I can't think of another platformer that feels exactly like this, or like has this kind of specific kind of like tossing, I don't know, worry around. There's a good physicality to it and momentum that I like.
The hope for a game like this, I think, is that just moving through it is fun.
Yes.
Like intrinsically, because it feels good to, you know, nail a double jump and a dash at just the right time and hit the platform, you know, right on the edge, and also intrinsically because it's great to look at. So you shouldn't need too much more than that. Everything else is kind of an accoutrement, in a way. And I feel like Ori does nail that. That's why it's above an 80. You know, I scored it an 81, I believe, and that's less than Ori and the Blind Forest. But I just think that first game was much more compact and never let any of its ideas get too old. I know you didn't like it as much, but I really enjoyed it. You just kind of got to enjoy this beautiful world and this really great finesse platforming for 5-ish hours. This one, to me, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily goes on too long. It's just, like I said, it does feel sloppier. Like the new sort of auto-save system can detract from enjoyment, I think, because I kept looking for that save spinning icon to make sure like if you don't land on a certain platform in a certain spot, it's not going to save. And it's like there are times where I would do something tricky, like go, I don't know, do whatever tricky platforming thing, and then I would go backwards and run to a spot I knew it was going to save because I don't want to have to do it again. That sort of like trying to game the save system detracts for me. It's not like everywhere, but once I started to do that and started to pay attention to that little save icon, it just started to bug me a little bit.
Yeah, well, see, I hated the save system from the first game because
that is gone. So if you hated that,
Yeah.
you might like it better.
you don't manually save anymore by spending spirit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the checkpointing has been okay for me so far, but again, I'm super early in the game, so I'm kind of nervous now. I remember getting so mad. I think because besides the fact that like Ori feels very good to use or to control, I think sometimes when the game puts you into, or in the previous game at least, and if I'm not mistaken in your review, this kind of happens again in this game, is the signposting in the game is not always clear. Like the things it wants you to do specifically during these like long gauntlets is kind of frustrating and requires a lot of trial and error to like eke out the specific path you need to take.
Certain assumptions, you know, that like there are some early puzzles where there are these diagonal branches and you can't pass through them. And like that's part of the puzzle, is that you have to know that diagonal branches, you can't drop through them. You can drop through horizontal ones. And then later in the game, there was a diagonal branch, and underneath it there was a pathway, but I didn't even think to drop through it because I had learned previously you cannot drop through diagonal branches. So I'm, banging my head against, I can't find any way forward. I go to all the other areas that I've been to, I look for anything I can do, and finally I go back and go, oh shit, I could just drop under that diagonal branch. I couldn't do that earlier. And it's like, when I really looked at it, I'm like, okay, it looks a little bit different than the other ones, and it wasn't part of the same kind of series of puzzles as those ones. But those things just can get stuck in your head of just like, diagonal, no, you cannot drop through it. Or I don't know. There were a couple places where, like in one of those big escape sequences, where I got to a point where I couldn't really see the next thing I was supposed to do, and there was kind of some visually confusing background information that made me think that there was like more sand I had to like shoot through, but it wasn't working. But all the particle effects were catching up to me and consuming me and killing me before I could figure it out. And this was at near the very end of this escape sequence that you have to do from the beginning. There's no checkpoint in the middle of it.
Classic.
So I had to keep repeating this super hard sequence just to get to the point where I didn't know what to do, just to try to see what to do. And finally I saw the little grapple hook location that I didn't notice before, and it took like 4 times to find it.
Yeah, that can be a side effect, I think, of the art. There's just so much going on that information kind of gets lost or misinterpreted, or is more prone to both of those things.
I misinterpreted. Yeah, I mean, misinterpreting something can mean hours of like kind of banging your head again, like I don't know what to do, because you might, like I said, you might just discount a possibility because it doesn't seem like it should work that way, or like it does. I got stuck in the water level because I didn't notice like one little graphic. I don't want to spoil a puzzle solution, but it pissed me off. So I don't know. I didn't have the benefit of being able to Google a guide if I got stuck. Other people will, so that frustration, if it does crop up, there'll be a solution to it outside of the game, I guess. But
gotcha. One more point I want to touch on, and it sounds like, again, I just want to underline that it sounds like we're maybe being nitpicky, but this is a genre I'm really fascinated with and love quite a bit. So we're gonna get nitpicky. Tyler likes this game and recommends it. So go read that review. But
it's fun.
The thing that I probably hate the most about Ori, despite it looking beautiful, I think narratively, the sentimental, like, make you cry sort of mythos that's born from this series, like, drives me crazy. It's cute animals doing shit.
It goes all in too by the time you get to the end. Just wait.
Really? God. So that's my question. Is like, do you feel? I guess like in your review you state, to the right person, this is gonna really work. But for me, the kind of like the person who's dead inside, and like, I'm not this like sweet, bright, overly sentimental approach to I don't know, depicting tragedy and like these really like these themes that are harped on so much and so often in I don't know, cartoons from 100 years ago and up until till today, like really basic moral, I guess, lessons. Does that continue through Ori? Is there actual like interesting stuff it's trying to say, new things it's trying to say with its cute little?
I certainly didn't walk away from it feeling that I understood a new philosophy of life. And not that should be the bar.
Yeah, I'm asking too much of it.
That a game strives for, but it's a cute story, and it's got a villain like the last game who is sympathetic. It's got also a very cute owl friend who, the scenes are sentimental and are extreme, intentionally extremely cute and meant to make you go aw, because the little owl tried to fly and its wings hurt, and his friends didn't know what he liked to eat, but they found him some grubs, and it's it's cute.
Yeah.
But there are also these like just kind of, I don't know, fun characters, like you mentioned the giant frog guy who you meet throughout the game, and there are some other guys you meet who are just fun, and some of the Moki have like cute little problems, like I don't know, one of them doesn't like the sun in the area he's in, and he wishes he had a hat. It's like, it's just cute and it's harmless, and I think where I find it a little grating is when there's sort of an obvious, I don't know if I want to say it's an obvious attempt to, but where it feels like it's trying to be gifable, to be the sort of like viral, adorable scene, or have people kind of go nuts for a certain character and make it their Twitter avatar, and like the Moki like meerkat thing is kind of almost talking sort of like a meme like lolcat way from back in 2010 or whenever people still said that,
Yeah.
They kind of have that affectation, and it didn't really bother me as much as I was kind of worried it would, knowing how sort of sentimental the first game was. I actually did find them charming and cute, and I found most of the characters pretty charming. And the ending was real tearjerker, but I was still like pissed off about the final boss fight by the time I got to it. So I was I'm watching the cutscene kind of fuming at the same time. So
all the emotions, yeah.
So yeah, if you play on normal, and if depending on like how much you buff up Ori throughout, it is the kind of game where you might finish a boss fight feeling like, well, fuck you, I fucking beat this stupid, and you won't really know whether to feel satisfied and good about it or just pissed off that you had to do it. That's where I was, at least. And when it's a mix of both, it's not all bad to me. Like getting through something really hard where I'm like, fuck, that was unfair, it was stupid. Like that last segment of the boss fight was such bullshit, but I beat it, and it's like, I'm in a place where like I feel euphoric, like I've stopped, like I was banging my head against a wall, and now I've just stopped, and it's like relief, it feels good. But it's kind of video games can have that weird sort of good feeling where it's because you've stopped torturing yourself.
Oh, trust me, I know. I beat Sekiro.
Right, it's a similar thing where it's like sometimes the good feeling is that you've stopped torturing yourself with a certain, once you've gotten past something. But that can be valid too, right? Anyway, I really like it. There's a lot to criticize there, I think, and
that's what we do. We're talking about, we're nitpicking, but because that's what we do. But again, like I said, it's a pretty high
beautiful
recommendation,
and it's cute.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. It's an interesting month. It's been a pretty quiet year, but we also have a certain Half-Life game coming and a Doom game coming. So,
oh my god!
Along with Ori, there's A lot, and I hope people play it because it is fun, and the art is just worth seeing. Like I think I said, I wish I could frame some of the scenes, but like keep the I need like a digital frame so I can have the looping background animations because they're pretty great.
Yeah. Cool. That's Ori and Will of the Wisps. Go read Tyler's review, PCGamer.com. I think it's like if you're unsure, I think Game Pass. It's on Game Pass, which is a I think we wholeheartedly recommend that subscription because
it becomes so much easier, you know, to just recommend something when if you have Game Pass, go play it for sure. Yeah. Like if you don't like it, you'll know within the first hour, and then you won't keep playing it. So go for it.
All right, Tyler. Well, thanks. Looking forward to all these next couple weeks. Bunch of reviews coming up, so it's gonna be a busy one.
That's right now. All right, thanks.